after being married to my childhood friend for decades, it wasn't until he passed away that I learned the truth. He was in love with my best friend. The times he proactively approached me, bringing me milk tea, snacks, and everything else, it wasn't for me. It was just a convenient way to bring her a share. He never confessed those feelings to anyone, silently watching her get a boyfriend, silently watching them be affectionate with each other. In the very moment they shared a passionate kiss, he turned to me with a smile and asked, "Do we want to be together?" Later, we had a daughter, and on the surface, our family seemed very happy. But until his final moments, he held my hand tightly, his voice trembling as he begged, "Kasha, if we could start over, could you help me pursue Skylar?" My biggest regret in this life was missing out on her, choosing you out of spite. So, the love I had always believed in was just his second choice. I pulled my hand away, looking at him coldly as I watched his heartbeat slowly stop. "Fine. If I get a chance to do it all over again, I'll grant you your wish." When I opened my eyes again, the unpleasant smell of antiseptic still lingered in my nose. But my surroundings had completely changed. I was no longer in the hospital, no longer waiting for the doctor to sign his death certificate. Instead, I was slumped over a desk, having just woken up from a long dream. Suddenly, someone slapped my left shoulder hard. Startled, I looked up and instinctively turned my head. My eyes met the familiar smile of my childhood friend, Dylan. "What are you spacing out for? Get ready for the meeting. Didn't you sleep well last night? I bought you coffee." With a thud, he placed a bottle of coffee firmly on the table. The sound was distinct, as if intentionally made to attract someone's attention. I looked straight into his eyes. They were clear and bright, his gaze so focused it seemed as if I were the only one in his world. In my past life, it was these sincere eyes that had completely deceived me and won all my affection. But remembering his words before he took his last breath, I only felt a bitter irony. "I don't like coffee." Thinking back, the signs had been there all along. The one who liked coffee was always Skylar. It had never been me. Dylan was slightly taken aback, not understanding why the me from his memories, always smiling and gentle, could refuse him so bluntly and seriously. He forced a charming smile, his eyes cautiously probing. "Then, what do you like to drink?" "I'll go buy it for you after class." At the same time, my deskmate and best friend Skylar looked up at me. Then, right in front of me, she curved her lips into a sweet smile for him. "It's okay, I like coffee." "Kasha, you can just give it to me." As soon as she finished speaking, Dylan seemed to snap out of it and quickly handed her the coffee bottle he was still clutching. "This was for you anyway." A faint blush crept up the young man's cheeks, a rare sight of shyness. I saw the entire little interaction. I didn't take the coffee bottle that had been placed on my desk. In the end, it belonged to Skylar. She turned to me cheerfully, even giving me a deliberate wink, her voice as sweet as honey. "Looks like I get to benefit from Arcasia's halo again." I just smiled faintly and didn't reply. However, that afternoon, when I went to wash my hands in the restroom, standing on the other side of a thin wall, I heard Skylar's familiar voice whispering with a few other girls. "You know that girl is so fake. Acting all high and mighty, isn't she just showing off that Dylan cares about her?" Another voice, mixed with a sneer, chimed in. "Seriously. If it weren't for Dylan, who would even want to be friends with her?" The words hit my ears, each syllable like a sharp needle piercing my chest. My fingers clenched, and the cold water from the faucet running over my hands made my mind clearer than ever. So all these years of friendship were only worth one boy. To escape this twisted love triangle, I decided to find a way to distance myself. I went to the head teacher to ask for a seat change. At that moment, she was looking at my academic ranking with a worried expression. "Kasha, I know you're a good kid, but you can't neglect your studies just to hang out with friends. Your results this semester have dropped by 20 ranks. You used to be in the top 5 of our class. At this rate, you can't even dream of getting into a top-tier university." I took a deep breath, my voice firm. "Ms. Peterson, that's exactly why I'm here today. I want to change my seat." Ms. Peterson paused, looking at me in surprise. It was because I had been the one to request sitting next to Skylar in the first place. At the time, I told her I wanted to help Skylar improve, to study and support each other. Thanks to me, Skylar's grades had improved significantly. As for me, I was too distracted by other things, unable to maintain my focus, and my results gradually fell behind. In my previous life, because of this, I only managed to get into a decent, but not top-tier university, forever missing out on the prestigious school I could have easily entered. But in this life, I wouldn't repeat that mistake. I wanted to reclaim what I had lost. I wanted to make up for the regrets of the past. Coming out of the teacher's office, I was surprised to see Dylan standing right outside the door. Since starting high school, he had grown taller and leaner, quickly becoming a tall, handsome young man. Facing him, I had to tilt my head up to see his eyes clearly. Dylan pursed his lips, his expression slightly tense, with an unconcealable hesitation in his eyes. A moment later, something warm gently touched my arm. I looked down and saw a carton of fresh milk, the kind fortified with calcium. In that instant, I couldn't help but laugh. So, he had always known what I liked. He just never gave it to me before. This time, I reached out and took it. Seeing me smile, Dylan's face finally seemed to relax, and his gaze softened. Before he could speak, I took the initiative. I asked Miss Peterson to move your seat next to Skylar's, I said calmly. I know you like her. You should take this chance. As soon as I finished speaking, Dylan's expression froze. There wasn't a hint of joy in his eyes. He stood motionless, as if all the life had been suddenly drained from him. I gave him one last quiet look, then walked past him without a backward glance. The head teacher was very efficient. By the end of physics class, my seat had already been changed. I just didn't expect my new deskmate to be Julian, the top student in both the class and the entire grade. He was naturally quiet, barely speaking to anyone except to answer the teacher's questions. Hearing that someone new would be sitting next to him, the tip of his pen, which had been busy with calculations, paused for a beat. He only glanced at me once, his gaze behind the clear lenses dark and indifferent, as calm and rippleless as a dead lake. That day, for the first time, I got through a full day of classes without any interruptions. No Dylan, no Skiller, no more furtive, meaningful glances. The air suddenly felt much fresher. After the evening self-study session ended, I was still engrossed in my work, the sound of my pen scratching against paper. Suddenly, a shadow fell over me. I looked up. It was Dylan. It was the same intimate tone as before, the same familiar youthful appearance. Kasha, let's go home together. There was an undeniable excitement in his voice. He must be happy about getting to sit next to his crush, right? I didn't look up, my voice flat. No, you go ahead. I want to stay and study a bit longer. As if not detecting the distance in my words, Dylan remained where he was, his tall frame blocking the overhead light, one hand resting on my desk. His tone was as familiar as ever. Studying a little longer like this won't necessarily help you improve. It's safer to go home early. He paused, then as if remembering something, he raised an eyebrow slightly. If I leave first, who's going to walk you home? He leaned down, his warm breath and body heat seeming to cross the space between us and settle on my shoulder. I looked up, straight into his smiling eyes. He had his backpack slung over one shoulder, wearing the same natural, carefree air of a teenager accustomed to me always agreeing with him. It was as if he was certain that all he had to do was ask, and I would nod in agreement. But then my gaze shifted past his shoulder. Right behind Dylan stood Skylar. Her face was slightly contorted, her eyes wide as she stared at me, as if in disbelief that I had suddenly turned to look directly at her. Her face stiffened for a moment, but she quickly forced a smile, making it look incredibly awkward. The corners of my lips curled up, a smile that perhaps carried a hint of cold malice. You don't need to worry about that. His fingers, which had been gripping the edge of my desk, turned red from the force. His breathing became heavier, his eyelids fluttering slightly. It was clear my words had hit their mark. A second later, that embarrassment turned into annoyance, mixed with a hint of shame and indignation. His voice rose, heedless of the people around us. Kasha, are you mad about the coffee? But you can't just accuse me like that. Who told you I like Skylar? Many students were passing by in the hallway outside the classroom. The noise immediately died down for a few beats. The other students' gazes flickered between me and Dylan, filled with curiosity and judgment, as if they were watching a good play. The atmosphere was tense enough to be suffocating. Before I could even open my mouth, the cold, distant voice of Julian, my new deskmate, cut in. With a single sentence, like shards of ice falling and shattering the chaos, he said, "Dude, nobody cares who you like. You're being loud." His tone was chilling, as sharp as a blade slicing through the air. The entire hallway fell silent. The air froze for a few short seconds. Someone in the crowd let out a stifled laugh. Following that, whispers began to spread like ripples. Countless curious and judgmental eyes fell upon us. Hearing all the chatter, Dylan seemed to realize something and quickly steadied Skylar, who was swaying as if about to fall. Before leaving, he turned to look at me, his gaze deep and complex, as if filled with unspoken words. Then, in front of more than half the class, he took her wrist and pulled her away, striding out of the hallway. From that day on, our trio officially fell apart. From then on, Dylan only brought breakfast, coffee, and other items for Skylar. They went to school together and went home together. The distance between them grew smaller and smaller, and I was no longer the one in the middle. Perhaps because of that, their feelings for each other developed quickly, becoming even more intimate than before. As for me, to avoid running into them, I could only wake up earlier, sleep later, and stretch my study time to its absolute limit. Finally, in the final exam of 11th grade, I reclaimed my 5th place in the class and ranked 20th in the entire grade. Looking at the report card in my hand, my heart felt a sense of stability for the first time, as if my destiny was once again back in my own hands. My gaze shifted upwards, finally landing on the first name on the list, Julian. The top student of the grade, a figure always admired, never surpassed. He had almost no weaknesses. Every exam was perfect, with almost no points lost on objective questions. Julian was like a precise, emotionless computer that never made a mistake. Looking down at my own pathetic physics score, a thought flickered in my mind. Maybe I should ask him for help. I tilted my head slightly, only to see Julian's gaze directed out the window, as if his mind was wandering somewhere far away. I followed his line of sight and saw the orange-red sunset and the clusters of clouds drifting lazily outside. Perhaps because my gaze lingered too long, he slowly pulled his attention back and glanced at me indifferently. "What is it?" It was clearly a question, but his tone was as flat as a statement. I took a breath and said in a low voice, "Could you help me with some physics, chemistry, and biology problems?" Julian's eyes fell on the test paper on my desk. He raised an eyebrow slightly. "You got a freebie question wrong. What good would it do if I taught you?" There was no sarcasm in his voice, no hint of amusement or disdain. It was simply an objective observation. But then he still reached out, took the paper from me, pulled out a pencil, and began to meticulously explain the formula. His words were concise and to the point, yet extremely easy to understand. His voice was deep and steady, like the sunset outside the window, making one feel at ease. After he finished explaining, Julian handed the test back to me. The moment I took it, he suddenly looked straight at me. His eyes were dark and deep, calm and bottomless. "You've improved a lot. Now that you've climbed up, don't ever fall back down." I froze for a few seconds, then nodded decisively. In this life, I would never let myself be drawn into their love games again, and I would certainly not back down. That night, there were no dark clouds in the sky, yet the rain came down suddenly. Julian didn't have an umbrella, but I did. So I casually offered, "I have an umbrella. I can walk you to the bus stop." He looked at me for a few seconds, his eyes as deep and cold as a still lake. "I have a car coming to pick me up. It's on my way. I'll give you a ride home." His voice was faint, still carrying the distance of an invisible wall, remote yet polite. However, I suddenly realized he wasn't as unapproachable as the gossip in class made him out to be. Julian was much taller than me, so holding the umbrella for him was a real struggle. He glanced at me, then naturally reached out. His long, slender fingers grasped the handle. "Let me hold it. The umbrella wasn't large. We walked side by side in silence. But I could clearly feel the umbrella tilting significantly towards my side. Kasha! Through the heavy downpour, I heard a familiar voice call out. A voice I had heard for decades in my past life, yet now, it sounded strangely foreign. I didn't stop, nor did I turn my head. I didn't want any more entanglement with Dylan. Julian glanced over at me, his faint voice carrying through the rain. I remember you two used to be very close. I was a bit taken aback, then chuckled softly. I'm surprised you know so much about what goes on in class when you're always buried in your studies. The corners of Julian's lips twitched slightly, a lively expression appearing on his usually stoic face for the first time. I study, but I'm not deaf and blind. He paused for a moment, looking straight ahead, his voice calm yet sharp. Dylan talks so loud. It's hard not to hear. Before he could finish, a figure blocked our path. It was Dylan. He didn't have an umbrella, and the heavy rain had soaked him to the bone. Rainwater dripped from his hair down his face, blurring in the darkness. Only his bloodshot eyes stared fixedly at me. His voice was hoarse, filled with a mix of stubbornness and confusion. I don't have an umbrella either. On what grounds are you walking him home? Do all our years of knowing each other mean less than the few months you've sat next to him? I looked at him, my heart as calm as an autumn lake. For the past few months, he had been immersed in his growing intimacy with Skylar. And I had always stood on the sidelines with a smile, letting him follow his own choices. Now here he was, standing drenched in the rain, his eyes red, asking me why I didn't choose him. How ironic. Every time he saw me, he would avoid my gaze, pretending I was a stranger. So, what right did he have to question me? I looked him straight in the eye, my tone calm to the point of being cold. Do you really think I don't know why you approached me? Dylan froze, a dazed look in his eyes, as if he hadn't processed the question. I had no desire to continue the entanglement. While he was still standing there, Julian and I quietly walked around him and out of the heavy rain. That's right. I should have realized this long ago in my past life. Dylan's sudden attention was never about me from the very beginning. He approached me not because our families knew each other, nor because of any deep feelings, but because of Skylar. Back then, she was a transfer student with a pretty face and a gentle demeanor, but her personality was somewhat bold. Her school uniform was neatly tucked in, but underneath she wore an exquisite soft floral dress, a clever touch that set her apart from the other girls. On her second day of school, she initiated a conversation with me, saying she wanted to be friends. Skylar's eyes were so clear and sparkling they could drown a person. I trusted her. We became friends, eating together, going to PE class together, sharing the little things in life. Not long after, Dylan, who was in our class, also started getting closer to me. Before, our relationship was just a simple hello when we saw each other. But ever since Skylar appeared, he suddenly became very enthusiastic. I was once foolish enough to think that it was a special affection he reserved just for me. But now I understand it was all just a little game to get closer to her more easily. The rain grew heavier. The car that came to pick Julian up stopped right in front of the school gate. He held the umbrella handle tightly with one hand and opened the car door with the other, tilting his chin towards me as a signal. Get in. I didn't stand on ceremony and gave the driver my address. A few minutes later, the car stopped in front of my house. Just as I placed my hand on the door handle, Julian's voice came from behind me. When the new semester starts, I won't be coming back. You have to study hard. If your grades drop again, no one will take you seriously. His voice mingled with the sound of the car's engine, half muffled by the sound of rain hitting the umbrella. I paused, unable to react at that moment. It was only much later that I understood that people often don't realize that a particular meeting might be the very last one. That year, the summer break was short, and I barely left the house. The first thing I did every morning upon waking was study. I knew my science subjects were weak, so I repeatedly went over the textbooks, did practice problems, copied down my mistakes, and learned how to apply one concept to 3 different problems, leaving no stone unturned. I didn't have much time. Heading into 12th grade, every step had to be flawless. Occasionally, I still received messages from Dylan. I blocked his contact, even his phone number. But he would just use a new number. I didn't understand why he was so persistent in trying to find me. He clearly didn't like me, so why waste his time on me? It wasn't until I realized that Dylan liked Skylar, but at the same time he enjoyed my cautious affection for him. He knew my eyes followed him. He knew about the care I gave him. On one hand, he was infatuated with the goddess of his heart. On the other, he enjoyed being pursued. He wanted both. His game was so obvious, yet in my past life, I was led by the nose. This life, I decisively blocked the new number and even marked it as spam. The summer vacation passed peacefully. In 12th grade, we moved to a new classroom. The seat next to me was empty. Just as Julian had said, he didn't come back. Julian's family was well off. Perhaps he had transferred schools or gone abroad to study. The spot next to me was quickly assigned to a new deskmate, Phoebe, the second-ranked girl in our class. She was calm, intelligent, and excelled in science subjects, but her English was a bit weak. We complimented each other, often discussing problems together during breaks. Gradually, we became close. Under Phoebe's guidance, my physics improved significantly. In return, I helped her with English, and her scores soared as well. In the first competency assessment test, Phoebe ranked first, and I ranked second, with only a 5-point difference between us. She teased, "It's a good thing Julian left. Otherwise, who could ever beat him?" I laughed, my mind involuntarily picturing his focused side profile as he worked on problems, and his deep voice saying, "Study hard." A new motivation sparked within me. I silently made a resolution. I would surpass his record. I would become the new top student. While I was engrossed in my studies, I would occasionally hear rumors about Skylar. Perhaps because I was no longer there to tutor her or summarize the key points, her academic performance plummeted, returning to the bottom of the class as before. But while everyone else was fighting for every second to study, Skylar focused all her attention on Dylan. That morning, with exactly 100 days left before the college entrance exams, in the empty hallway, I witnessed Skylar confessing her feelings to Dylan. It was still early, before the morning self-study session. There were only a few scattered students in the classroom. I was sitting near the entrance, engrossed in my work, when I suddenly heard a girl's voice, both timid and filled with secret anticipation. "Dylan, I like you." Skylar's voice was soft, but it was clear enough to reach my ears. Every single word distinct. "I know you care more about Kasha, but I still want to try for myself just once. Can you be my boyfriend?" There was no sound from outside. The silence was only broken by the sound of my pen gliding across the scratch paper, as I focused on finishing a derivative problem. A long time later, Dylan's voice finally came, hesitant and indecisive. "The college entrance exam is coming up. We should focus on studying first, maybe later. If we get into the same city. Before he could finish, Skylar cut him off. "Dylan, there's a boy from the next class who's pursuing me. If you reject me, I'm going to say yes to him." Silence fell again for a while. Then, against the distant sound of rain in the schoolyard, Dylan's voice, low and strained, replied, "Okay, I agree." I finished writing the last line of the formula and checked it against the answer key. A perfect match. Just then, Phoebe leaned over, her surprise unconcealed. "Wow, you're so fast! You finished everything in less than 10 minutes. She winked, smiling cheerfully. "How about this? Whoever gets the higher rank on the next test has to treat the other to a meal, deal?" Before I could answer, the test paper was snatched from my hand. A voice, sickly sweet and soft, sounded beside me. "Ah, the top student is so brilliant." It was Skylar. She was smiling, her eyes bright as if sharing good news. "Let me tell you something happy. We're dating now." With that, she held up her hand, which was tightly clasped with Dylan's, and smiled dazzlingly, though her eyes held a hint of provocation. "And I have you to thank for giving us so much time together." Phoebe, sitting next to me, froze, her eyes wide and mouth agape, unable to utter a word. As for me, my hands resting on the desk were so calm it felt foreign even to myself. I had never seen anyone so brazenly declare their relationship in front of friends like that. This was 12th grade, with only a few months left until the college entrance exams. Ultimately, which was more important, the future or love? Could Skylar really not tell the difference? Skylar and Dylan stared at me, their eyes bright with anticipation, waiting for me to get agitated, to lose control, to show my heartbreak. However, I remained calm, even offering a smiling blessing. Really? You two make a beautiful couple. I always thought you were a good match. Dylan's face instantly stiffened, the smile on his lips frozen in place. Kasha, Skylar was just kidding. I tilted my head and looked him straight in the eye, the corners of my lips curling into a faint, sarcastic smile. I'm not your parent, and I don't need to approve. Why do you need to seek my opinion? The bell for class rang, and the classroom quickly filled with noise. Skylar and Dylan awkwardly returned to their seats, avoiding my gaze. Beside me, Phoebe leaned in and whispered, "Are those two crazy? It's their business if they're dating. Why show it off to you?" I shrugged, my voice indifferent. Who knows? In the next mock exam, I surpassed Phoebe for the first time, becoming the top student in the class and ranking third in the entire grade. There was still a gap between me and Julian, the former king of academics, but I wasn't discouraged. I was sure that one day I would surpass him. Time and again, exam after exam, there was no time for sorrow or self-pity. All I could do was pack my bags, give it my all, and march towards the next finish line. The stacks of scratch paper filled with formulas grew taller, while the pile of blank paper on my desk dwindled. Every difficult problem, every minor weakness, I cleared them one by one. I rewrote every mistake, mastered the methods, studied until I could apply one concept in 3 different ways, until it was etched into my very bones. This life, I finally gave myself a chance to fight with all my might. On the final mock exam before the college entrance exam, holding the report card, I saw my name at the #1 position for the entire school. My total score exceeded 700. I had become the new top student, standing in the position that once belonged to Julian. Miss Peterson, the head teacher, looked at me with a radiant expression, a hint of pride in her eyes. "If you just maintain this momentum, you'll definitely break through in the college entrance exam." She smiled, and as if remembering something, she slowly added, "Oh, right. When Julian left, he told me that you would definitely make it." I froze, a jolt running through my heart. "Julian ... he mentioned me?" Miss Peterson nodded, her voice gentle. "Yes, he said you and Phoebe complement each other very well, and that if you sat together, you would definitely improve by leaps and bounds." At this, a hint of regret appeared in her eyes. If Julian hadn't gone abroad, I'm afraid the top student position in the entire city would have been his. A warmth silently crept into my heart, quickly followed by a pang of longing. If Julian hadn't gone abroad, perhaps we could have become the greatest rivals. With the college entrance exam approaching, I threw myself even more completely into my studies. All personal emotions were set aside. There was only one goal left: to conquer myself. However, just as the entire school was tensed for review, shocking news exploded. Skylar was pregnant. This rumor was like a spice to the stressful school days, a stone thrown into a lake, creating 1,000 ripples. Within a single morning, the story had spread throughout the entire school. It all started when Skylar's parents stormed into our classroom, their aura menacing. Her mother walked straight to the podium, her voice so loud the entire hallway could hear. "Who is Dylan?" Whispers immediately broke out like a disturbed beehive. The physics teacher on the podium also froze, as if he had misheard. Skylar's seat was empty. All eyes, without exception, turned to the desk by the window where Dylan sat. Surrounded by dozens of stares, Dylan stiffened, forcing himself to stand up, his voice hoarse. "Tease me." His eyes flickered, evasive as if holding a secret he couldn't speak of. Her father, without another word, strode over to him. Slap. A loud smack echoed through the classroom, hitting everyone's ears. Half of Dylan's face immediately swelled up, the red imprint of fingers clearly visible. Before he could even turn his head, a lab report was slammed down on his desk. Her father was so angry his fingers trembled, his voice a low, hoarse growl. You uneducated brat! You've ruined my daughter's life, do you know that? She's so young, not even an adult yet. How could you trick her into doing something like that? On the lab report, the HCG level clearly indicated a 4-week pregnancy. The sound of rain in the hallway, the shifting of desks and chairs, everything fell silent. Dylan's eyes widened, his voice trembling in disbelief. No, that's impossible. I didn't do anything to her. Slap. A second slap landed, causing his head to snap to the side. Her mother then rushed forward, crying and screaming, her trembling hand delivering another slap. Within minutes, 2 bright red, asymmetrical handprints appeared on Dylan's face, swelling up to the point of distortion. The once handsome, refined face now looked no different from a swollen pig's head. Soon, Miss Peterson and the grade's disciplinary supervisor rushed over, calming them down and escorting Skylar's parents outside. Dylan kept his head down, his face flushed to his ears, and shuffled out of the classroom after them, not daring to look up. I watched his back disappear behind the door, feeling nothing at all. The high-spirited young man, the one who once shone so brightly in my memory, now seemed so ordinary, so petty, and so detestable. In the critical period before the college entrance exam, Dylan stopped coming to school. Perhaps he couldn't bear the scrutinizing gazes and gossiping whispers from his classmates. Or perhaps it was because he truly had something to hide. Whatever the reason, it no longer had anything to do with me. Now, I only had one goal, the final sprint. In the following days, I maintained a steady routine, keeping my mind calm and determined. 7 days before the college entrance exam, on my way home from the evening self-study session, Dylan suddenly appeared in front of me. He was wearing a long-sleeve shirt in the middle of a hot summer, a blue-purple bruise at the corner of his lips, his face so haggard he was almost unrecognizable. I frowned slightly. Before I could speak, his voice came out, hoarse and trembling. Kasha! Whether you believe it or not, I didn't do it. Skylar and I were dating, but we never went that far. He paused, taking a deep breath, a hint of pain and indignation in his eyes. She was two-timing me. She didn't protect herself and then turned around and blamed everything on me. I went for a test. The report can prove everything. Kasha, you have to believe me. The once proud young man with his head held high was now slumped over. His eyes were bloodshot, with dark circles clearly visible beneath them. His body was thin and haggard to the point of being misshapen. His eyes looked at me, pleading, filled with a desperate need for understanding. But did it matter whether I believed him or not? I looked him straight in the eye, my voice calm, each word landing heavily. Everything that's happening now is a result of your own choices. You can't blame anyone else. Whatever the truth is, it has nothing to do with me. In that moment, the last light in his eyes died out. But I didn't understand what he was disappointed about. Wasn't this exactly what he had wished for in the past life? Without me in the way, weren't he and Skylar doing just fine? From that day on, to avoid seeing him again, I intentionally took a detour home. On the day of the college entrance exam, my parents drove me to the testing center themselves. Perhaps due to the effects of my rebirth, my memory of the previous life's exam questions was completely blank. As soon as I got the paper, I didn't overthink it and just started writing continuously. The pen flew across the paper. I was like someone chasing the light, running with all my might towards a brilliant future. When the final subject ended, the bell rang. I put down my pen and took a deep breath, feeling as if a weight that had been pressing down on me for this entire lifetime had finally been lifted. Everything had finally settled. On the day the scores were released, I opened the results website. The moment I saw my score was hidden, I had a feeling. Sure enough, the universities I hadn't dared to dream of in my past life sent admission offers one after another. In the end, I chose Hua University, a renowned and prestigious institution. Seeing the pride and emotion on my parents' faces, all the effort was worth it. When the provincial rankings were published, I could hardly believe my eyes. I had thought that with my results, I would surely be the top student in the city. But the numbers on the provincial list left me stunned, first in the entire province. It was a position that surpassed even Julian. His name still popped into my head. If we were still in contact, maybe I would want to show off to him about this achievement I never thought I could dream of. I wondered where he was now, and if his life was going as he wished. The ringing of my phone pulled me back to reality. It was Miss Peterson, the head teacher. Her voice was filled with joy and admiration. "Kasha, congratulations on becoming the top scorer in the province. Can you come to the school for a bit? I have something to give you." Arriving at the school, I went straight to the teacher's office. After asking a few questions about my university choices, Miss Peterson chatted with me for a long time. Before I left, she suddenly handed me a light purple envelope. "Julian asked me to hold on to this for you. He said to only give it to you after you finished your college entrance exams. It's getting late. You should head home." Holding the envelope, my feelings were hard to describe. My memory rewound to last summer. That day, Julian didn't have a pen refill, so he turned to borrow a pen from me. The pens I used were all bought in bulk, with transparent casings and lilac flower designs. He glanced at them and suddenly asked me, "Do you like purple a lot?" I kept my head down, continuing to write English vocabulary without looking up, and casually replied, "Yeah, it's pretty, don't you think so?" It was just a small pen, just a passing remark. And yet he still remembered. I walked into an empty meeting room and gently opened the envelope sealed with red wax. The letter paper inside had a border of lilac patterns, as if silently echoing that memory. The familiar handwriting was neat and clean. "The first time I saw you, you were at the water dispenser getting water. I had a fever that day and didn't have any warm water to take my medicine. You gave me half a cup of your hot water. When I bent down, I saw the name tag on your chest. It said, Kasha. At that moment, I thought you must really like oranges." The familiar handwriting, cool and steady, was like Julian's voice echoing in my ear. "Every effort you make now is so that you won't have regrets in the future. I believe you've achieved what you wanted. I wish you a smooth journey and a brilliant future." It was a very simple, short letter, but it filled 3 pages. Yet, from beginning to end, not a single word was about himself. I sat in silence for a long time, my hand gently clutching the slightly heavy envelope, a vague, empty feeling creeping into my chest. Julian was no longer in the class group chat. No one knew how to contact him. Between us, the only connection left was this letter. Lost in thought, my phone suddenly rang. It was an unknown number. As if guided by an invisible force, I answered the call. A deep voice, slightly distorted by static but still strangely familiar, said, "I heard you were the top scorer in the province. I'm calling to congratulate you." My heart fluttered, still not fully recovered. "Julian ... where are you?" His voice came through the phone, clear and gentle, like warmth seeping through my eardrum. "I applied to a university in London. I'm slowly getting used to life here now. What about you? Which school did you choose? Is it Hua University, the one you mentioned?" I was momentarily stunned, a small smile playing on my lips. "Yeah, that's right. Julian, you have such a good memory. We were only desk mates for a short half semester." Yet he remembered every word I had said. A hard-to-name emotion welled up from the bottom of my heart. I forget what else we talked about that day. I only remember clearly that before we ended the call, Julian's voice carried a soft laugh, deep and warm like a gentle summer breeze. "May your future be bright, Miss Provincial Top Scorer." To celebrate this year's achievements, the school hung a long banner with my name prominently in the center. Right outside in the hallway, on the railing, they posted my photo and the name of the university I was admitted to. Every time my parents went to the market, they would deliberately walk past it, take a picture, and show it off in the family group chat. In that photo, next to me was Phoebe, my desk mate and the second ranked in the grade. Both of us in our school uniforms with our youthful faces and eyes full of life. Looking at that photo, I could see a piece of my own pure youth. That summer was the most relaxing one since my rebirth. Dylan no longer bothered me at all. Until one day, while having dinner with my parents, I heard news about him from their casual conversation. He only got into a second-rate university. That's strange. With his previous grades, he should have at least gotten into a good one. My mother sighed, her voice lowering. I heard it was because of some relationship drama. His little girlfriend got pregnant, and the whole school was gossiping that he was the cause. It turns out he was wrongly accused. It was a student from another school. She paused, adding another sentence. His mom said he's going to transfer and repeat the year. I remained silent throughout the meal, not chiming in at all. My mood was quite good, and I had a great appetite. Besides, the food my dad cooked today was exceptionally delicious. Thinking about how I would have fewer chances to eat home-cooked meals once I went to university, I cherished every bite even more. Suddenly, my mother looked up and asked, "Honey, I remember you and Dylan used to be quite close. You used to mention him a lot. How come you don't anymore?" Before I could answer, my dad interjected, "Our daughter is doing the right thing. Don't get involved with that kid. You can tell he's not a good person just by looking at him." In that moment, memories of my past life flooded back. Back then, Dylan and I were engaged. That night, my father sat at the table drinking, sighing for the entire evening. Later, he sought me out for a long talk about it. He just quietly asked me how Dylan treated me in my eyes. I used to think that he couldn't bear to let me go. But looking back now, it turns out my father was the best judge of character. At the end of August, my parents took me to Hua University to complete the admission procedures. While waiting in line for verification, in the parallel line next to us, I saw Dylan and Skylar. The two of them were pulling a large suitcase, hand in hand, looking intimate and affectionate, exactly like a devoted couple. I just turned my head slightly, pretending not to see them, but Skylar's voice rang out, clear and deliberate. "What a coincidence, Miss Top Student. Are you here to register too?" When Dylan saw me, his hand quickly let go of hers. His face flushed red, and he turned away, not daring to look at me directly. I just replied with a simple, "Yeah," and nothing more. Seeing this, my father chuckled and asked, "Little Dylan, didn't you say you were going to repeat the year?" Dylan stiffened and had to turn to greet my parents. "Uncle, Auntie." I felt that repeating the year might not necessarily be better, so I decided to enroll now. "It's been a while, Kasha." His gaze shifted to me, complex and filled with something I didn't understand and didn't care to. Because I knew very well that talking to a fool would only make me a fool. I turned my face away without a word. He chatted with my father for a few more sentences, while Skylar stood beside him, her eyes sparkling, clearly waiting for him to introduce her. But from beginning to end, he never opened his mouth. I sneered inwardly. "Dylan, isn't this the girl you desperately wanted? Isn't this the love you pursued at all costs? Yet, when that love is right in front of you, why do you still hesitate, waver, and not dare to acknowledge it?" He was more complex, cowardly, and pathetic than I had ever imagined. On one hand, he was infatuated with Skylar's beauty, constantly orbiting her. On the other hand, he despised the very things she did. His love was so cheap it was nauseating. During my 4 years of university, I poured all my energy into self-improvement. I studied diligently, participated seriously in all activities, conducted my own experiments and research projects, and constantly enhanced my abilities. Whether it was friendships or academic achievements, I strived to handle them as perfectly as possible. I made friends with many like-minded people, earned their trust, and gradually became part of a network of relationships.